The midday sun spilled across the open courtyard of the private airport, casting sharp, unforgiving shadows on the gleaming white jet that stood like a monument in the hangar. A small crowd of well-dressed executives and airline staff gathered near the aircraft, their polished leather shoes clicking a rhythm of wealth against the smooth concrete floor. The air was thick with the mixed scents of jet fuel and expensive polish. Into the middle of this perfectly arranged picture walked a man who seemed utterly misplaced, like a smudge of dirt on a pristine painting. He was thin, with skin baked dark by a lifetime under the sun. His cheeks were hollow, but his jaw was strong, and his hands were gnarled and calloused from decades of hard work. His shirt was tattered at the collar and stained with the earth he worked. His trousers were frayed at the bottom, and his simple straw hat was bent and misshapen. A worn leather bag, sagging with age, dangled loosely from his shoulder. As he shuffled forward, heads turned. Smirks blossomed on lips. Whispers slithered through the group, followed by muffled chuckles at the impossible sight of a man who looked as though he had wandered directly from a village farmyard into a world of billion-dollar machines and luxury suits. The farmer's name was Raghav Sharma, a man whose life had been measured not in moments of comfort, but in seasons of toil. For most of his 70 years, he had woken before the sun, working the soil with his bare hands, weathering blistering summers and unforgiving monsoon rains. While others around him now wore pressed shirts and shiny shoes, Raghav wore what he had always worn, patched clothes, old sandals, and the same straw hat that had protected him from the sun for nearly 20 years. To anyone looking at him, he was nothing more than a poor, aging farmer, clinging to the last threads of a difficult life. But what they couldn't see was the truth Raghav carried silently within him. It was a truth hidden beneath the layers of dust and grime. For decades, while others sold their fortunes, Raghav had quietly bought lands they had abandoned, patiently tending to them, nurturing them with his own hands until they blossomed with life again. His farmlands stretched farther than most could even imagine, spreading across states, over rolling hills, and through fertile valleys. He supplied grains, fruits, and vegetables not just to his own country, but to markets all over the world. His investments, chosen with a farmer's wisdom and patience, had multiplied year after year, until his personal wealth towered over that of the very men who were laughing at him in that hangar. Yet, he never changed his way of life. He had no desire for golden watches or shining suits. His true joy came from the simple things: working the land, listening to the sound of crops rustling in the wind, and watching the young farmers he mentored grow into successful, prosperous men. As Raghav stood near the jet, one of the younger executives leaned towards his colleague. He whispered, just loudly enough for Raghav to hear, "What is he doing here? He must have lost his way from the fields." The group around them chuckled, enjoying the joke. Raghav lowered his eyes, not from a sense of shame, but from a place of deep, unwavering patience. He had been hearing words like these his entire life. He remembered walking into banks years ago to ask for loans, only to have clerks mock his torn clothes. He remembered going to markets to sell his produce, where traders sneered at his simple appearance. To them, he was invisible, a nobody, unless he had money to put in their hands. But today, the situation was different. Today, the very jet they were preparing belonged to him. The hangar echoed with their quiet laughter until a man in a sharp navy suit stepped forward. His smile was wide, and his confidence was overflowing. His name was Aditya Malhotra, an ambitious manager who prided himself on his ability to connect with the rich and powerful. He pointed a finger directly at Raghav's chest and said mockingly, "Old man, this is a private facility. You don't belong here." Behind him, the staff and attendants tried to stifle their laughter. To them, this was a moment of entertainment, a strange old man stumbling into a world where he was clearly out of place. Raghav's gaze slowly lifted. His wrinkled face remained calm, but his eyes held the weight of decades of storms that these people could never imagine. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood there in silence, and his quiet presence was unsettling enough to make their mockery falter. Just then, from the far side of the hangar, the airport director hurried over with 2 assistants. His voice was full of authority as he saw the scene unfolding. "Mr. Sharma," the director said with the utmost respect, "your jet is ready. The pilots are waiting. Would you like us to arrange any refreshments before your flight?" The crowd froze. The laughter died in their throats. Aditya's face drained of all its color as the director's words hit him. He stared in disbelief, finally understanding that the man he had just ridiculed was not a beggar, not a lost old farmer, but the owner of the magnificent jet standing right behind them. Murmurs spread like wildfire through the group. The women in uniform gasped quietly, their mocking smiles melting away into expressions of pure awe. Raghav simply nodded politely to the director and began to walk past the stunned group. He didn't offer a single triumphant glance. He didn't throw their insults back in their faces. He had lived too long and seen too much to waste his energy on proving his worth to people who measured a man by the quality of his clothes. Instead, he climbed the stairs into the jet, his steps slow but steady, his head held high. Inside, as the powerful engines hummed to life, Raghav sat by the window, gazing out at the runway below. His mind drifted back to the early days, to the nights when his wife would stay up late stitching patches onto his clothes. He remembered his children going to school with no shoes because they couldn't afford them. He remembered selling his first harvest at a price so low that he had almost given up on his dreams. He remembered the ridicule of his neighbors, who called him a fool for buying barren lands that no one else wanted. He remembered the taunts of the traders who dismissed him as a nobody. He remembered the pain of it all, but he also remembered the unshakable grit that had carried him through every single challenge. The jet rose smoothly into the sky, carrying with it not just a man but a lifetime of quiet perseverance. Down below, the very people who had mocked him stood silently, their heads bowed, their pride shattered by the powerful lesson they had just been taught. For true wealth, they were beginning to understand, could never be measured in fabric or gold. When the jet leveled out high above the clouds, Raghav closed his eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude. It was not a prayer for his riches, or for his lands, or even for the power of owning fleets of aircraft. It was a prayer for the strength that had allowed him to remain the same humble farmer he had always been. His vast fortune had never changed his heart. He still walked his fields every single morning. He still gave away food to the hungry without a second thought. He still funded schools in villages where children had little hope. That was his real wealth. The wealth of giving, of humility, of staying true to oneself. And so, the story of Raghav Sharma is not about the riches found in bank accounts or in contracts signed in tall glass towers. It is about the richness of the human spirit, the quiet dignity of a man who rose above judgment without bitterness, and who reminded the world that while appearances can easily deceive a person's character, will always reveal the truth.